Hello, everybody. This is the 10th of February, and this is primarily for Admentum students to prepare you for your first test in World War II. This will be a review of the Prelude War and the early parts of World War II. I advise you to look at the notes. They are a condensed version, and they will help you a great deal on your first test and on the end of unit test. So, to understand World War II, you have to see the two systems that are arising in the democracies of Europe and the United States. In Europe, you have three countries which are quickly developing along fascism, which again is a authoritarian government that has strong elements of nationalism, uh, elements of government control of industry, and racism as a large factor in many cases. Germany, Italy, and Spain are quickly becoming fascist nations. And you see a picture here of the two fascist leaders, Hitler and Mussolini. In Spain, Franco, who was a general and very popular with the military, becomes the fascist leader of Spain, although they do not join World War II. In the Western democracies, the United States, Britain, and France are all experiencing a form of malaise or bad feeling and distrust of their government. The Great Depression has ruined the United States. It suffers greatly and has actually a very poor recovery. It takes World War II to make America get out of the Great Depression. And combined with the failure of the economy, you had natural disaster affecting the large parts of the country. And we have a picture here of a group of people from Oklahoma who were victims of the Dust Bowl and lost everything and had to resettle. The New Deal does help bring hope to the United States and some forms of relief, but it does really very little to take care of the sluggish economy, with unemployment running around 18% throughout 1932 up to the start of America's involvement in World War II, where it gets back down to single digits because of the increase of industry. One of Germany's nationalistic policy was living space. They wanted to expand their country back into everything they had prior to World War I and also go beyond. And they looked to the east, where they had lost a lot of territory, and to Russia. This was seen as a national goal to spread throughout Europe and make Europe basically dominated by Germany and its culture and its racial policies of the Nazis. There was a lot of dehumanization of people, ethnic minorities in particular, in Europe, throughout Europe, in World War II and well before World War II. Europe has had a horrible history of dealing with people who are ethnic minorities and those who culturally and religiously are different. The pogroms were a series of attacks that went on from the 16th through the 20th century, mostly in Eastern Europe and Russia, including parts of Germany, but mostly in areas that are now Poland, Czechoslovakia, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, the Ukraine, and Russia. And the pogroms were basically meant to disrupt Jewish people. They were distrusted because of their cultural differences and because of their religious differences. And this has been something that had gone on since the Middle Ages. Here's a picture of people being forced out of their homes and made to resettle in a faraway place. As Europe goes on, we were talking quite a bit last unit about the weakness of the League of Nations and how it became viewed as a doormat. Basically, they had no way to enforce the agreements, and they were relying on the goodwill of nations. But what do you do when you get someone like Hitler, who's not going to take no for an answer and threatens military force? Well, England and France were kind of on their own in this one because the United States was wholly isolationist. They wanted nothing to do with the affairs of Europe. They were only concerned with the Western Hemisphere, and in the 1930s, only concerned with getting their country out of a horrible depression. So the United States said, we're not involved, we are not playing in the European sandbox. This left England and France, who had suffered horrible casualties, and where the people were not willing to go to war, and the leadership understood that, and they really didn't want to go to war. The idea of the Britain's idea of keeping Germany as kind of a counterweight to France and Russia had failed disastrously when Hitler took over in the early 1930s, bringing about fascism, which again is radical nationalism, persecution of those who do not comply, strong directing of the economy. Germany goes through an economic boom. We saw that in our chart last week on the Depression, how they grew rapidly and were the only country to not really be negatively impacted by the Great Depression. And so Hitler is very much intent on getting Germany back where they were, and he occupies parts of Germany that had been taken over by the Allies, and the Allies do nothing. The League of Nations is not going to do anything, and France is not going to do anything, nor is England. They're not going to commit to a war. This proceeds on with occupation of the Ruhr. Then he goes to Austria and Germany unified. Many of the people in Austria were ethnic Germans, and so in 1936, Austria and Germany become one country. It's called the Anschluss. Then Hitler looks to Czechoslovakia and an area called the Sudetenland, which was overwhelmingly populated by German people and had been part of Germany prior to World War I. And he starts putting pressure that they want to occupy that these people are being persecuted, they're being treated wrongly. The short version is that he does occupy the Sudetenland, and this almost causes a war, but France is not willing to go to war. They had shown the Germans, when they occupied the Ruhr in 1934, they were ready to withdraw at any sign of French attack. The French did nothing, and Germany realized they had a free hand. Later on in 1938, all of Czechoslovakia is given away by an agreement signed by Britain and France and Germany. Britain led the effort, and you see a picture here of Neville Chamberlain, who was the Prime Minister of Britain, and Hitler shaking hands as they basically just gave away all of Czechoslovakia in a policy that was called appeasement. And the idea was giving in to someone who is a threat in the hope that that will satisfy him. But they should have known what Hitler wanted. He had written all about the need for Germany to expand and expand aggressively into the East. They just were not willing to pay the price. And in the next part, America, if you can see from this picture, and you can click on it to make it bigger, you see Uncle Sam is pointing at Europe and saying they have no stomach, they have no guts. This was a poster that was done in the 1930s. But what about the U.S.? They're totally isolationist. The United States is such a large power, even during the Depression, with so much industrial capacity. They had turned the tide in World War I by the massive influx of men and material and ended a war that was stalemate for 3 years. Once the United States troops get there, along with their material, the war is totally tipped in the balance. So America is staying out, yet they're very critical of Europe and saying, you're creating a problem, but we're not going to get involved. So there's a little, and this political cartoon kind of shows the hypocrisy of the United States to make fun of Europe, that they have no guts, and not take any ownership of the problem and being part of, you might say, the whole world uniting against Hitler. The United States is not willing to do it. They say it's a European problem. Things get worse. In 1936, a civil war breaks out in Spain between the elected government, it's a Republican government. It's socialist. It's somewhat hostile to the traditions of Spain in that they put a very restrictive rules against the people who had been in power, and also against the church, and religious functions are put under a lot of strain. This causes the Republican government to have an exceptional amount of resistance. Mostly it's found in the military. The military does not like this government. They do not trust it. It's very left of center. And in 1936, a civil war breaks out, led by the military against the established government, which is something that is kind of hard for us maybe to fathom. Imagine the United States Army rising up against the federal government and going to war with its own government. Oh, you can understand that many of the soldiers had torn loyalties between their government and the rebellion. This becomes a proxy war for World War II, where basically it's like a dress rehearsal. The weapons that are going to be used in World War II, Russian and German planes, strategies, tanks, these are all played out with the Republicans being supported mostly by Russia, because the Republican government had a very high element of communist support in its established government, and that was what the nationalists really despised. They really disliked communism. German and Italian equipment, as well as advisors and observers are participating in the war. There's actually about 1,000 Americans who volunteer, and they form what's called the Lincoln Brigade. And these are mostly socialists who believed in and wanted the spread of socialism throughout the world. They served in the Lincoln Brigade, and they served for about 2 years. And I have a picture there of members of the Lincoln Brigade. So Americans were involved in this war, but as volunteers only. Like all civil wars, this is one of the most brutal and horrible wars fought, with atrocities running rampant on both sides. Both hands entered into this fray dirty, and they left a lot dirtier. In the end, it is the nationalists who win the war, and they establish a military authoritarian government which has some freedoms restored, but really puts a clamp on political ideology. Socialism is basically put into a box and contained, and communists are driven out of Spain in massive numbers. They flee, and basically you have the pre-1933 government restored, but not quite restored. But it's a long-term thing, and Franco, who is the leader of the rebels, the nationalist rebels, stays in power for nearly 40 years and is a strongman throughout Spain. What he said went. At the beginning of World War II, you have Germany and Italy, and they form a union, and France and Britain are on the other side. Russia is not involved in it, but what they do is they sign a non-aggression pact with Germany, which means that we will never go to war with you. Now, Russia and Germany hated each other. The National Socialism really hated the idea of communism. And so this is seen as a remarkable treaty, and the world, especially England and France, look on this and they know there's trouble. And that agreement is signed in August of 1939. And what that does is it clears Germany. They don't have to worry about Russia, and Russia doesn't have to worry about Germany. And Germany knows they can no longer get anything by appeasement. So Germany goes to war, and they attack Poland on September 1st, 1939, in what's called Blitzkrieg, or lightning warfare. Nothing has ever been seen like this, and the Polish army is being crushed by the Germans, but they manage to fight back, and they're holding line, and then Russia attacks and stabs Poland in the back. So you have Germany, who's been attacking from the west, and now Russia comes from behind and attacks them from the east, and Poland is destroyed, basically, and they will be occupied by Russia and by Germany, two totalitarian states, and the Polish people suffer horribly under this occupation. Russia is not quite done. Remember, Russia had given away territory at the end of World War I because Lenin just wanted peace and to establish the center. Well, all that territory, Russia goes after them. In 1939, Russia attacks Finland, and the much smaller Finnish army does a great job, and they hold off the Russians, inflicting massive casualties. And I have a picture of Finnish troops using camouflage in a defensive position. You can see how well equipped they are and ready for a winter war. Russia is not prepared, but eventually Russian numbers take over, and they are able to conquer Finland in early 1940. In 1940, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, and France fall under the Germans. France, which had resisted it for 4 years, falls in 6 weeks. And you see a picture here of the German army marching through Paris under the Arc de Triomphe, and a Frenchman weeping as his nation has fallen. And he realizes life is going to be very different for him, because the Germany of 1870, the Franco-Prussian War, is not the Germany of 1940. Finally, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are also attacked by the Russians. They had given these countries independence in Brest-Litovsk Treaty. And you see here Lithuanian soldiers who are defending their home in 1940. You see the size of these countries. They were mice fighting against a lion. Lithuania, these Lithuanian soldiers, as well as many from Latvia and Estonia, after Germany attacks Russia in 1941, they will side with the Germans to get revenge. So we can see the cycle of nationalism, militarism, and the inability to look at political solutions, with the result being the start of a horrible war. But this war is different than World War I. Germany is clearly the aggressor and using war for political means. That's all. I know this was a longer cast, but this will help you greatly with your test coming up and your post-test. And for the other students, it will help you understand the unit better. So have a great rougher day and stay warm.